Hello and welcome to GxB, Video Games and the Blockchain. I'm your host Chris Stead. You're watching Crypto Finder TV and we're here to talk about video games and blockchain technology, and we've got another epic show for you this week. We're going to talk about four, count them, brand new, well, reasonably brand new games that are coming to the world in 2019 featuring blockchain technology, and we're going to talk about a really interesting new funding concept that involves blockchain technology and getting those kind of mid-tier, low-level games funded and out in a much more efficient and cool way. So let's get crack-a-lacking straight into it with news story number one, and that is about Hash Rush. Now, this is a game we did speak about briefly, maybe even close to a year ago now. But some new gameplay footage has emerged, which is what we're talking about today. I'm going to show you that footage at the end of this news story. Just a bit of a debrief on this game, Hash Rush. When we first saw it, we straight away thought that this was a game, well, I straight away thought this was a game that had something deeper going for it. Dare we say it even looked a little AAA with its polish and its visuals in a way it was approaching the world. Now, it's coming to PC. It's made by these guys called VZ Games. I don't know anything about it at the moment, hearing about their previous history or games before. They're based out of Latvia. They started with about 20 staff, so they kicked off with a reasonably decent sized team for an indie project. I'm sure that's growing as the game's progressed and interest has grown around it. The alpha came out in July of last year with an idea of coming out in Q3 2018. That did not happen, and instead they went into a beta. But they did a pretty cool thing with their beta where they actually throw out $30,000 worth of Ethereum into the pot for the 10,000 beta players. So the people that got involved with testing it actually walked away with some tokens, which is a great concept, a great way to start getting a community involved with this game. So how would you describe the game? It's kind of, well, it's an RTS, but it looks a bit like Spore. So I'll explain that for you. The RTS elements of it are kind of classic from the genre history. We're talking about three different races being involved here. We've got base building, we're creating units, we're setting up our defenses to kind of protect our settlements. We're doing some resource gathering, we're doing some crafting, we're gathering crystals, which I'll go into a little bit after we talk about the RTS basics of it all. We can spend the kind of resources we get on crafting upgrades, and of course we've got to fight off the local monsters. There isn't any direct PvP from what I can see, but we do have a leaderboard situation here, so there is going to be some sort of multiplayer aspect in terms of competing with your fellow players, but generally this looks like a PvE kind of base building scenario as your main go. Now, in terms of the sport elements of it, you can kind of see in the image I've got up there, but you'll see in the footage for sure, it has a very Spore / Super Mario Galaxy feel about it, with these circular worlds that you can go over and around, and it's a very, very interesting way of seeing an RTS play out. I've never really kind of seen an RTS where your base kind of just rolls off over the horizon. I think it looks very cool. You'll make your own judgment in a sec. Now, I do have a screenshot to show you of the game so we can show you a little bit more about it. So here, as you can see there, you can see the kind of horizon rolling off the background. All your classic RTS elements are in play. That's your barracks, as you can see there. It's a level 1 barracks. You can obviously level up your units, your buildings, as well as your units. The units up in obviously the player has a level as well in the top corner, the top left corner. You can see level 1 there. So you're obviously leveling up as a player, leveling up your units, leveling up your barracks, making various units to explore. You can see these blue lights in the vegetation around here. I think this ties into the crystal mechanic. Lots of different resources up in the top right corner there as well. So, you know, look, as an interface and as a visual polish, you can see straight away that it looks kind of typical to what we've come to expect from the RTS genre and also those higher tier indie games. In terms of how the blockchain is going to be used in this game, the crystals that you mine are actually called crypto crystals, and you're trying to find these kind of crypto crystal veins inside the world. So they've kind of tied their units of in-game currency, but also their whole entire crypto experience into the actual act of mining. You will also be rewarded these crystals for in-game activities and completing various kind of tasks and quests. So there's multiple ways in which to kind of bring in that income stream, and it can also be cashed out, should you want to, into actual real money, which is what we love about blockchain games. You can also obviously trade the items that you build. So you can gather resources, craft items, and sell those on the open market to other players who want to jump the queue and perhaps get access to things that they need to craft the things that they want quicker than usual. Some of the monetization in this game is going to come from the customization of your world, your specific world, and also kind of skins, Fortnite style, dress up your various races. As you can see, all I've seen so far is one of the races in action, which is the one we'll see in the trailer in a sec, but you can also see some of the NPC monsters walking around in the trailer. Looking very solid, this game. It's a bit of a shame that it missed its main Q3 launch in 2018, but obviously they came out of the alpha, learned a bit about the game that they wanted to do, rolled into a beta, got a lot of people involved in that. So they're doing the right thing here. They're getting the game right before release, not after release. Hopefully we'll see a release on PC sometime in the very, very near future. And while you're waiting for that, and to get you excited, here's the latest gameplay footage, and this is a good looking game. Told you, it's looking good, isn't it? Okay, on to our next game now, and this one is called HyperSnakes. Now, this is from a developer called Mix Marvel. Now, they made Hyper Dragons, which is a game you may have heard of before. And obviously, after completing that game, they kind of thought, well, what other animal can be hyped next? They landed on Snake. And if you're in the gaming world, you will know Snake as the very first viral mobile game. Viral in that it was the only game you could play on your mobile. And it was massive, like hundreds of millions of people have played Snake. So these guys have thought, well, how are we going to make Snake relevant again for the modern audience? We can add some really cool technology ideas like blockchain, and we can add in a genre which is really hot right now, Battle Royale. So this is what these guys have thought, their thought pattern, and that chain of thought has led to HyperSnakes. Now, a bit of a warning here, the visuals are super cheesy Japanese style visuals, but the concept here in the background is reasonably quite interesting. So the core gameplay is based on Snake, the game that you used to play on the mobiles, which is where you control back then it was just a black line, going around the square screen of your little Nokia, and you could turn left and right, and as you went you'd pick up little pellets, and those pellets would increase the length of your Snake, making it harder to maneuver in the space, and the more that you longer you got, the harder it was to go, and eventually you'd top out and die, and that'd get your high score. So that was the game. That concept is kind of retained here. However, now you're in an arena which is a lot more colourful. There's a lot more going on. There's kind of these poison circles that can suck you in and kill you. There's various pickups you can get which give you weapon abilities, and there's other players in the world as well who are kind of moving around in that same space as you, trying to avoid collisions and detection. So the game becomes a lot more aggressive, I guess, in that sense that you guys try to survive against these other players. In addition to that, despite being a Battle Royale experience, and I've got to say, I think they're just saying Battle Royale just to jump on the bandwagon. There's not a whole lot of Battle Royale here, but I guess it's the last person surviving in an arena, so it's got that going for it. But you can respawn, so you don't have to worry about dying and being out of the game. However, this respawn does affect your final tally at the end of the game, which also affects your rewards, which is where kind of the blockchain side of things comes in. So you can kind of play this game casually, or you can jump into like a rewards pool, kind of a tournament style mode, where you can go in, and it looks to me like you have to pay a certain amount to get into the game, and you pay amount based on the difficulty of the arena you want to jump into. The lower the difficulty, the less reward you get. The higher difficulty, the more rewards you get. After competing, it tallies up your performance, how you kind of went, what you used, how many respawns, that kind of type of thing like that, and works out how you did, and then kind of rewards you based on that. Beyond that, there's also an ability for you to host the arena, and there's some sort of reward system that's set up for that. It looks to me like a bit of a lottery. So if you have volunteered to host a game, to be a server, and to allow the other players to kind of come in and work off you, then at the end of that they will roll a dice, and if your number comes up, you'll get a reward, which will be some sort of cut of the money that the people are paid in to play. I'm assuming here based on what I've seen. But this is how these type of things generally work. On top of that, blockchain also ties into the snakes themselves, which can be customized and made to look all nice and pretty and long and snake-like, a colourful snake-like, Viva Pinata snake-like, and you can then trade those and sell those with other players who may think that your artistic abilities far exceed their own. Look, it's an interesting game. It's an interesting idea. I like the idea of combining the snake-like formula, which was like well-proven gameplay that, you know, it just worked. It's like Tetris, it just worked. And then they added into that some different types of flavors and styles. We have seen Snake, the gameplay concept, come back a number of times over the years, but this is kind of one of the more exciting applications of it, with adding those battle royale features and a bit of blockchain tech as well. Will people jump in and go in such a large enough scale that they've got a nice big pot of money there that they can offer people rewards with? Fingers crossed, because it does look kind of fun, but you can judge by yourself because we do have some gameplay footage for you. This is HyperSnakes by Mixed Marvel. There you go, that's HyperSnakes, and judging by the look then, it should probably be called Hyper Chinese Dragons, but maybe that's just a skin. Okay, so let's have a look at our next game, and this one is Ember Sword, and this game looks sick! It's been coming for quite a while. We have mentioned it once before on the show, but there's been some developments which are going to take you through in a sec, but let's just recap what this game's all about. It's made by this mob called So Couch Studios. Now, these are a developer that's made up of ex-Guild War guys. Guild Wars being one of the best free-to-play MMOs during the kind of purple patch for that genre during the 2000s. Still kicking on. Guild Wars is a really good game. It's coming to PCs and browsers. It's free-to-play, and it's a player-controlled world. They're calling it a modern MMORPG experience, and I'll explain what they mean by that. The reason why we think this game is so cool. So in this world, players own everything. And what the developer has identified with the classic MMO is that ultimately it's bridged, or there's boundaries that a developer created. They want to remove that. So players go in and they own a piece of land in this world, and they're free to do whatever they want on that piece of land. Now, that's not just a piece of land where you might put one building or something like that. This piece of land is actually like a proper play space, and in that you can create basically a game within itself, but within the confines of that universe. So it's not just like, I guess, creating willy-nilly style buildings of your own creation. There are kind of prefab stuff that you dump in, but then how you execute that and where you put it in and what resources you manage to gather around your space to craft those things ultimately defines kind of the role that you play in the greater world, and how you define yourself, and how other people in that world may come into your space and trade with you and experiment with what you've got. It's looking really, really, really cool. And some of the things you can do, as well as just placing buildings, is also kind of place monsters in your world. There is a PvP element to it, as well as PvE. So what you kind of do with your space is really up to you, and what type of character you want to become in the world is really up to you. It's classless, the combat's called classless, the crafting is limitless, you can do whatever you want there. And it's been really, really impressive seeing the visuals for this game kind of build up. It kind of reminds me of what RuneScape would have looked like if the Bastion guys created it. You know, that's the kind of developer visual style they've got going on. The world looks super detailed. What I've seen come up looks very, I guess, specific in the kind of roles you can play, which I think is exciting. And it's going to, if that's really open-ended, it allows people to kind of really populate this world with very different types of skill sets, as we've seen with some of the other games in the blockchain space going for the MMO concept, like Project Genesis, for example. I think it's a very exciting space to play in, especially when the trading of these things happens with, in this case, a cryptocurrency called Pixel, and allows people to actually earn real world cash out of being involved in this environment. Now, I do have a screenshot to show you of the game so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. So here's obviously a piece of land that someone has bought, no doubt one of the developers, and you can see there's a fair bit of space there to play and customize and build things. This person's built a little castle, so maybe they're offering some sort of military support. I don't know what's going on with the octopus in the pool, but maybe that's some sort of threat or danger that people can compete against. You can probably set up some sort of quest like that. You can see there's various tier levels on the right there. There's a purchase plot option here, so that's extend your land potentially. And there's lots of different things you can buy on the left there: blacksmith, resource refiner, hunter's lodge, alchemy tower. So what you do with your land is definitely up to you. Okay, so on to the most recent announcements around this game, and that is that the developer, SoCouch Studios, has partnered with OpenSea. Now, OpenSea is a digital marketplace, kind of similar to Wax in a way, but more focused specifically on digitalized tokens that you can trade with other players. Now, some of the biggest names in the blockchain space are already using OpenSea: Gods Unchained, MLB Crypto Baseball, CryptoKitties, Decentraland. They are all using it. Apparently there's 1 million collectibles now on the service that you can explore, discover, trade, and otherwise buy or sell. Now you can add the Ember Sword to that list, but Ember Sword's going one step deeper. These guys are going to work on an integration of OpenSea into the actual game. Now, I think this is definitely the way forward for this type of technology. I think these things need to become more of a middleware solution rather than just an external service. It needs to feel organic and part of the gaming experience if it's really going to take off. So the idea of this partnership is that in the game world, when you go inside, hey, I've got this cool thing that I've crafted, or I've got all these resources that I've got excess of and I want to trade off, or my plot of land has the best mine of this thing that I want to sell on, you can just put that onto the marketplace and seed those resources or seed those crafts into the greater MMO experience without having to go out to a browser or out to another part of the game. Definitely the way forward, definitely the way to go. And this will all be based on that pixel in-game currency I was telling you about earlier, which is built off Ethereum, so it can be easily traded in and out. So if you really go hard in this game and do really well, you should be able to create some sort of residual income out of it if everything's going well and you have a cool, sexy town that everyone wants to visit. So we do have a bit of gameplay footage to show you as well, so you can see what I've been wafting on about in real world video. Check it out. This is the Ember Sword looking really good. And there you go, that's the Ember Sword. Like I said, looks really, really good, doesn't it? Okay, on to our fourth game for this episode, and this is Hero of CryptoWorld. Now, this is kind of the hero genre is on the up at the moment. Overwatch obviously made it really super popular. Apex Legends just dropped and has implemented that into the Battle Royale experience. And Hero of CryptoWorld is looking to be just as big. Will it be? Probably not, but anyway, it is looking reasonably solid at this point in time. It's very clearly got some influences here from the Final Fantasy games of the 90s era. So the gameplay rolls out as, well, there's an adventure mode. So the adventure mode is kind of got an overworld map where you move from point to point along, entering into battles. There's quests to complete as you go. There's a story. There's cinematic experiences shown in the trailer that we're going to show you at the end of this news piece. However, most of the story that I've seen in-game is text-based, but there's quite a lot of it actually. that leads you through each of these kind of jumps down the overworld map as you get towards the boss battle at the end. Actually, boss battles are a huge focus of this game, as you'll see from the trailer. But the main thing here, the main part of this game is your heroes. So your whole idea here is to kind of collect heroes, level them up, create a party system, a lot of party management going on, and then play these parties of characters into these levels, into these stages, either in the PvE adventure mode, or there is a PvP mode called the arena, and to allow them to kind of fight it out and gain further experience and leveling up. Some of the fights we've seen are rather crazy. They look like a World of Warcraft raid where there's like maybe 50 heroes in a little space, all throwing away their various abilities at the big boss that's also in the arena. I've also seen various like classes of heroes, such as a healer, kind of healing the rest of the group. So there is a bit of management there. However, it does have an auto feature. So it feels like you can, if you're just a grinder, just set the whole entire combat up into auto and just let fly and put all your time into the actual hero management, of which is quite deep. There seems to be a lot of skills, ruins, equipment, abilities that you can go in, swap in and out of characters based on how you want to set up your heroes, level up, purchase. In fact, in terms of monetization of this game very much seems to follow your classic mobile free-to-play monetization strategies, more than what we've kind of seen with some of the blockchain games. However, the blockchain is involved, and the blockchain seems to be mostly handling the kind of transactions of new bits of equipment and runes and skills and that side of things, and kind of those who want to jump the queue in terms of their hero management and hero party setups, rather than kind of looking at trading the actual heroes themselves. However, it would kind of strike me as very, very odd if you were going to have a blockchain game and you weren't going to allow players to own the heroes that they've got and then swap them out. The only thing that makes me think that they're not doing that specifically, or it's not in the works, is they've actually said somewhere in the material that I was seeing in my research that there's 200 various heroes, whereas if we're looking at crypto collectible style thing with the heroes, that would be unlimited or more or less unlimited, so that everyone has a unique thing. Perhaps it becomes unique as you level up in various ways, so perhaps that's going about it. I certainly hope that the combat in this becomes more tactical than it appears at this stage in the game, because if you're going to be more focused on the party management style of it and just getting through the story than you are in the actual collectible side of it and the actual tactics of combat, then I think that you can actually make more from this game by leveling up on that tactical side of things and making the heroes, like we see in an Overwatch or an Apex Legends, become more vital to the gameplay success. Hopefully that's something that they build on. I do have some gameplay footage to show you. As soon as you see it, you're going to think, this is Final Fantasy, but it's not Final Fantasy. This is, in fact, Hero of CryptoWorld. Check it out. You may have seen there some kind of like a DBZ style ultra attacks as well, which I think is a pretty cool addition. I didn't mention that before. And I also didn't mention the developer. So the developer, it's the joint project between VX Network and Neo Scion. I'm going to say that's how it's pronounced. And there is a story. The story is involved in taking down a Dark Lord who's trying to resurrect himself. So that's your end goal, is to take down the Dark Lord, like all good video games. Okay, on to our last news piece for the day. This is a really interesting one. This is a new thing that's kind of fallen across my desk called Planet Digital Partners. Now, this is not, we usually talk about kind of blockchain being used in actual games. This is actually the use of blockchain to actually fund the game. So it's a different kind of system, right? So how it works is that they did a security token offering, which allows people to buy what this is called a rocket token. And in doing that, the money that they bring in from the investment of those rocket tokens is then used to fund, publish, and distribute the video games. Now, these guys are targeting video games that have like a $10 million budget, around that type of range. So they're not going for those kind of high-tier AAA blockbuster games, but those ones in that kind of lower lower mid-tier, just above the indie kind of level, which actually still sell a fair amount and have really good ideas, maybe a little bit niche, maybe a little bit genre, but it's going to bring funding to that thing. It's going to provide a new playground for these guys to work on. The way it is the investors will fund this game through this security token sale, and then as the game goes on sale, they've got a really interesting split, a really good split, I think, for the investors in terms of how that money comes back to them. So the split is 80% of all profit until 100% of the investment is recouped, at which point it splits down to 40% profit. And then any sequels to that game that come out, you get 5% of. So there's a potential there to get quite a residual income ongoing if you pick the right project to back, or if the unit, the partners pick the right project to back. The tokens are deliberately scarce, so there's only 38 million tokens being released. This means that there will only be a small number of games that are in development at any one stage. I think this is a good idea. This allows them to concentrate on those, make sure that they're done properly. But it also means that the rewards that you get back in that rocket token will actually hold their value as well. I think it's a good move. It does mean that they won't be pouring out a heap of games, but it means they can be selective, and it means that games that come out have a better chance of succeeding in my mind. The reason why, one of the main reasons why we're excited about this idea is the pedigree of the people involved. There's some really good talent here. So we've got I'll read them out to you. The former Take-Two founder is involved, who moved on at one stage was the CEO of Red Octane and made the Guitar Hero series. The former PlayStation Europe president is part of this. One of the big Nintendo marketing gurus, the heads of Saber Interactive, a developer that's been around for a number of years, they're involved, and a whole lot of blockchain experts as well. Jack of all games founders involved. So there's some serious know-how here, which gives it a far better chance of succeeding than anyone else we've seen come along in the industry. When you've got guys like that who already have the contacts and can release these games multi-format across the board, gives these guys a lot better chance of getting involved. On top of that, there's already some games that are part of it. That's the photo there, that line leaping out of you is not the Lion King 3, is actually Cabela's The Hunt, a game that is well known for good and bad reasons in the gaming circle, but also Cookie Mama has already been announced as part of this process. That's a game that does do well. And the Bass Pro fishing games as well, which are also quite popular. Niche, yes, but popular. And when you're looking at a 10 million budget game, you don't have to sell too many to start making a profit for those investors. Saber Interactive titles are also going to be involved in this. As I said, the heads of Saber Interactive are part of the Planet Digital partners. And those guys are currently working on World War Z. I know that that is a game being published by Focus Home, so I don't know if that is going to be part of this or whether Saber Interactive will be using funding to make their next projects. That bit was left unclear, but still, titles already in the loop, and these are titles that are expected to come out in 2019. So people who do get involved in this do have a chance of potentially receiving a benefit or some sort of refunds based on their investment shortly. Like I said, why we think this is really important is because of the pedigree of the people involved. There's already franchises involved that have some selling power, and this does provide a new opportunity for games in that kind of indie crossover point to get enough funding to complete their games well and have people who with the know-how to actually distribute it properly. Is the 80% cut a bit aggressive to begin with? I don't know. You get your game out there and you're still getting 20% of any profits, which, you know, it's not great. I get it, but I hope for that 80% that is taken out of the net, out of the net profit. So everything in terms of like what your distributor platform like Steam has already taken out is already accounted for in that. So there's not a further cut coming out of that 20%, but still, it is a big cut, 80%, but it does drop down to 40 after the game has recouped its investment, and then onwards and upwards from there. I do have some footage I'm going to show you that goes into more detail about what the digital Planet partners are offering. But before that, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for joining us on another big episode of GxB. 4 new games. I hope they excite you as much as it excited us here on the team. I hope you join us next week where we see if we can discover and unearth some even more exciting games coming to the GxB video games and the blockchain gaming space. Thank you, and enjoy this further deeper insight into potentially a new world of funding games.
In 1977, Atari launched the first home video game console featuring the arcade hit Pong. Lifetime sales were $10 billion, but poor quality games caused Atari to implode in the early 80s. In 1985, an Italian plumber, made in Japan, reinvented the video game business when little-known Japanese company named Nintendo launched their own video game console. Nintendo, followed by Sega, Sony, and Microsoft, turned a $10 billion business to over $130 billion today. But major game companies like Electronic Arts and others focus on developing big-budget $300 million games. Their narrow focus ignores games that cost under $10 million that can achieve sales of $50 million plus. Meaningless to them, but very meaningful to us. We call this the opportunity sweet spot and the foundation of Planet Digital Partners' security offering. Planet Digital Partners represents a collective of the most successful management, development studios, distribution, and marketing executives ever assembled. From the former president of PlayStation, to the founder of Take-Two, the CEO of Guitar Hero, and the developers of Halo, NBA Playgrounds, and Quake, the Planet team is well positioned to deliver profits to its partners. Planet already has several hit brands, including Bass Pro Shops, Cooking Mama, and Cabela's. These games have sold over $300 million, and PDP will publish new releases that fans are anxiously waiting for. Blockchain will take gaming to a whole new level, and many of the Planet games will be early adopters of blockchain as a disruptive element to extend the life of a game by adding unexpected features like characters moving seamlessly between different games and new ways to use virtual items in and out of games. Blockchain will also eliminate virtual goods and leaderboard fraud, encouraging wider consumer adoption of Planet's games. Today's game sales have exploded to more than $138 billion, with annual sales growth of 11% plus. Planet games will be published on all major gaming platforms, including PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PC, and mobile. Planet invites sophisticated investors to access the highly lucrative video game industry on the ground floor, utilizing our digital security rocket token offering that's democratizing investment. Investment in PDP rocket tokens is limited to 38 million rocket tokens at the launch price of $1. Join us for liftoff.